what's up? My name is Daniela and welcome to a new video. So in this video I want to talk about my 2020 reading goals and intentions. If you know me, you know that I love goals and talking about goals is one of my favorite things to do. And in my video where I reviewed how I did with my 2019 goals, we found out that I did pretty well and some of the goals stayed the same for this year, but I had a lot of fun coming up with some new goals, so there are definitely some changes which I'm very excited about. So as I have said, I have some goals and also some intentions, and the distinction, at least in my mind, is that my goals are more or less quantifiable or pretty much straightforward, and my intentions are things that I don't want to quantify and are just things I want to do but don't want to put it on my goal list. I don't know if this makes sense. I will explain a bit more as we get into the video. So yeah, let's get into the list of the actual goals. So the first goal is my Goodreads reading challenge, and it stayed the same as last year, which means I want to read 50 books in 2020. The thing is that I would like to hit 100 one year, but I don't want to put this kind of pressure on myself, so 50 is a really good number for me. It motivates me to stay really consistent with my reading, and if I want to read more, that's great, but the number is 50. Goal number 2 is a goal that has proven to be very good for me because I have set it for the last couple of years and I really liked it and I achieved it, and yeah, I want to do it again, and it's to read or unhaul all the books I got before 2020. Because I've been doing this for the last couple of years, that means that all of the books I currently own are from 2019 or there are new ones from 2020. So basically it means that I need to read or unhaul all the books I got in 2019. There are 21 of them, which is a pretty high number, but yeah, so it's going to be challenging, but it's something I really want to do because I don't want books to stay on my shelves for too long unread, because then I lose most of my interest, and I think it's best to read the books I get as soon as possible. So yeah, I really like this goal and I think it's going to be fun. Goal number 3 is to read 12 non-fiction books and actually implement some changes into my life. The part where I'm supposed to read 12 non-fiction books is not going to be a problem because I read twice as much in 2019 and I've already read 2 non-fiction books in January, so it's going great. I'm really interested in non-fiction. I really enjoy reading non-fiction books, so I know I can achieve this pretty easily, but the challenge is the part to actually implement some changes from these books into my life, because I often listen to these books on audio and it's great, it's really practical, but it also means that I just listen to it, I feel very motivated and inspired at the moment, but then I kind of forget what the book said. So in order to achieve this goal, I think I'm going to have to buy or otherwise get physically some of these books so I can really get back to them and, you know, review the important parts and implement some changes. This part is not very quantifiable, but I think that I will be able to tell if I at least attempted to do it or I didn't do it at all. So yeah, I'm really excited about this goal, although it's probably one of the biggest challenges on this list. Speaking about challenging goals, we have goal number 4, which is to get and keep my NetGalley ratio above 80%. In case you don't know, NetGalley is a website where you can request books in exchange for a review, and your feedback ratio is the ratio of books you actually reviewed from all the ones that were granted to you. The thing with me and NetGalley is that when I found out about the site, I got overexcited and I requested a lot of books, and this continued while I was on my book buying ban in 2018 because it was exciting. It was getting books for free. It was, and it still is, a really great opportunity for me to read books for free for a review, but it got too far, and right now I have, I think, 17 books I still need to read and review, and it's just a lot. And I've been feeling very overwhelmed by this number and my ratio for a couple of months, well, probably for the last year, and it didn't help and it didn't change much. During the last year it got worse. The more I requested books, the more overwhelmed I felt, and the less I read these books, so it got pretty bad. So right now I need to get from the bottom and get to 80% and be more intentional about which books I'm requesting. So this year I will get my feedback ratio above 80%, and I will be more careful about what I'm requesting and if I'm really that excited to read that book. Goal number 5 is something that I think might be a little bit controversial, or at least unusual. I think that a lot of people are setting a goal that is the opposite of what I want to do, but my goal is to let myself buy more books. So as I have mentioned, in 2018 I was on a year-long book buying ban, which I kept. It was okay. And in 2019 I set a budget for myself of $35 a month. This one I more or less kept as well, and some months I didn't buy any books and some months I bought several books. I think with buying books and book buying habits in general, it's very subjective because everyone's situation is very different. And my situation is that I live in the Czech Republic, but I read books mostly in English, and this means that books that are in English are not as available for me as for someone who lives in an English-speaking country. And if I go to the library, there are English books, and there are more of them than I expected actually, but the selection is very limited. Basically, they have only a couple of books that are on my high priority TBR. From time to time they get something interesting that I really want to read or a new release, but most of the books I want to read are not available at my library. I personally don't feel the need to own all of the books I read, or even most of them. With most books, I'm just happy to read them, and I know that I'm not going to reread them in the near future or ever, so I really don't need to own them. If my library had the books I want to read, I think the story would be different, but as it is, it means that I need to buy a lot of the books I'm interested in, because otherwise I have no access to them. And yes, there are audiobooks and I have a SCRIBD membership, but the thing is that I love audiobooks, but I know that with certain genres it wouldn't be ideal for me to read these books as audiobooks. For example, fantasy, or even sci-fi, or even some contemporary books that I really want to savor, or I know I will love, or they are by my favorite authors, etc. And the thing is that you can only read a book for the first time once. So with a lot of books, I know that I wouldn't get as much as I can from them if I listen to them on audiobook. And also, as I mentioned, with non-fiction books, often it is really practical to have the physical book, because you need to get back to it if you actually want to implement some changes and if you want to, you know, really get something from them. So SCRIBD is great, but it doesn't work for all of the books I want to read. And since I discovered BookTube, or even before that, since I started reading for fun again after graduating college, I got into this habit of making do what I had in terms of books, which means relying on my library, etc., instead of buying the books I was actually interested in. I was getting frustrated by the fact that there were these books I was excited about and I didn't have free access to them, and I chose not to buy them, although I technically could. I decided that for 2020 I don't want to set any budget for books for myself, because the thing is that reading is one of the things that bring me most joy in the world, so it's something that it's really worth giving my money for. So this was a very long-winded explanation, but I really wanted to explain properly where I'm coming from with this goal and why I want to let myself buy more books in 2020. Goal number 6 is another exciting goal, and I know I keep saying it, but I'm just really excited about goals, and it is a little bit different than the other ones, and I don't think I've set this kind of goal for myself before, but it is a goal to read in the morning and before going to sleep. So I've decided to add this habit hole. So I've decided to add this So I've decided to add this habit goal to my list because I know from experience that I feel really good and accomplished when I read in the morning. The way I do it is usually that I listen to a non-fiction audiobook during breakfast. So I'm usually getting some motivation or inspiration from it, and I'm getting some reading done in the morning instead of just being on social media or watching YouTube. So it's something that I really want to do, you know, on a daily basis. I'm not putting it in my daily habit tracker or anything. I just want to do it on most days, especially when I'm home alone. And reading in the evening before bed is at least equally as important to me, and it has several benefits. So for one thing, I can get lost on YouTube or on social media or just on the internet in general and not get any reading done. And also, if I keep looking at screens in the evening, it's bad for my eyes and for my migraines and for my sleep. Another added benefit this goal might bring, or I hope so, is less time on social media in general. During these times, I'm not that good at not looking at screens in the morning or before I go to bed, so that's definitely something I want to work on, and reading could help me do it. So these were my official goals, but I also have some intentions, as I said. There are only 3 of them. So my first intention is something that a lot of people have on their lists of goals, which is great, and it is to read more diverse books, especially books with a queer main character or a main character who is a person of color. I think most of us want to do this and read more diversely, but a lot of us fail at it, and I realized, especially last year, that I need to get really intentional about it, but at the same time I didn't want to set it as a quantifiable goal, like you need to read that many number of diverse books in a month or something, because it's not something that I want to force myself to do. It is my intention and not my goal, because I want to look at this list often and remind myself that, hey, this is something you actually want to do. So I realized that I need to be a lot more intentional about this and go out of my way to look for these books, because to start with, there already are a lot of books on my TBR that are not diverse in this sense. Maybe there is some representation in them, but it might be only side characters, etc. So I really want to focus on main characters, and my strategies for this is, as I said, look at this list regularly and remind myself that it's something I want to do, and to keep it at the front of my mind, and also look for these titles on SCRIBD and NetGalley, also buy some of them and jump at them when my library actually gets some diverse books for a change. The second intention is another one that might sound a little bit strange, similarly as my buying more books goal. So it is to cut back on library loans, and yeah, I need to explain myself. So we have established that the selection at my library is not great for my needs, but I absolutely love libraries. I spent a lot of time in them during my childhood and teenage years and adulthood, and just I love them. I think they're absolutely amazing. I love to borrow books, and the activity of going to the library and saving money and, you know, being a part of the community and all of that. But the fact is that sometimes I got carried away and I did these huge library hauls, and the thing is that it really started to stress me out, and I started to feel really overwhelmed by the number of books I borrowed. Of course, it is connected with the thing that I talked about earlier, because these books weren't the books that I was most excited about. There might be some of them, but with most of them they were just, okay, they are there, so I will borrow them because I'm mildly interested, but they weren't the ones I actually wanted to read the most. It became really hard to keep up with my borrowing habit, and yeah, I started to get really overwhelmed, and like right now I'm still reading books I borrowed in the fall, and I had to extend them many times, like physically bring them in, which is very annoying, and I just start to like feel almost resentful towards the books. They just start to feel like an annoying to do, and it's really not fair to them, because, you know, it's my own fault that I borrowed that many. And again, I don't want to set a quantifiable goal for this, like you can't borrow more than 5 books at a time, because that would be annoying. But yeah, I just want to be aware of the fact that I just can't read that many books in a month from a library, and that it will be better for me if I just borrow the ones I actually really want to read. And my last intention is to read more poetry. So this is the same case. I didn't want to set it as a goal, but it is a reminder that, hey, this is something you want to do. I obviously read some poetry in school, etc., but I haven't read that much modern poetry, but it is something that I'm really interested in. Well, I actually did read quite a lot of modern poetry when I was a teenager, because I was a part of this website where I wrote poems and read poems, so it's not out of the blue if I think about it, but I never read like published modern poetry. I read Amanda Lovelace last year, but I really want to get more into published authors of modern poetry, and also people who haven't been published, so like stuff on Instagram. I have started posting poems on my Bookstagram. I don't know if people are interested in it, but yeah, I want to read more poetry and also write more poetry in 2020. So this is it. I think it's going to be a pretty long video, but I just had a lot of things to say about these goals and intentions, and it's something that I'm so excited about, which I have already said like 10 times. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on my goals, or let me know what some of your goals are. If you want to follow me somewhere else, I have links for my Bookstagram, Goodreads and Twitter in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!